Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally ho!
I'm Nayar,
And I'm Kavora.
and we're the hosts of StarPodTrek, the podcast that explores Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future. And we are so excited because we've been following CBS All Access with all the Star Trek content that's available there, and we're looking forward to even more so to the fall of 2020 because there's even more Trek content that is at our disposal. For this segment, this special segment, we're going to talk about how awesome CBS All Access is and how necessary it is to see the future of the Star Trek franchise.
Engage.
Star Trek on CBS All Access. So the advantage of this streaming format, the episode length can vary. Instead of trying to make it exactly 42 minutes, there are no network censors, which could be a good or bad thing.
So we're saying overall there's much more creative freedom, and we're used to this sort of creative freedom with other streaming shows that we watch. So this is a great thing for Star Trek.
The modern shows on Star Trek CB All Access. Now, we just like to call this the Kurtzman era. Alex Kurtzman co-produced Star Trek 2009, the movie, and also Star Trek Into Darkness. And he's the executive producer of all of these CBS Star Trek shows. We have Discovery, Short Treks, Picard, Lower Decks, and then the upcoming shows. There's Strange New Worlds and Section 31, which we don't know really the title of, but we heard it'll be about Section 31. And there's also a show called Star Trek Prodigy, but that one we didn't put here because it's supposed to be on Nickelodeon instead of CBS All Access.
Now there's been some talk that possibly it could be cross-platforms, but nothing has been confirmed. I think that's more of a hopeful thing, but we don't know.
So spoilers, do you know who the Red Angel is? Do you know Ensign Mariner's relation to Captain Freeman? I know these kind of sound like trivia questions. We're just saying that if you don't know the answers to these questions, then there may be some spoilers for you as you go on in this presentation. Discovery. This was the first Star Trek show on CBS All Access, started in 2017. And so we've seen 2 seasons so far. The 3rd season starts on October 15th, which is not too far away. We are so glad they started filming it before the pandemic happened.
Absolutely, and this was announced in 2015. So we see with a stretch like that of roughly 2 years to make it, we know that they put so much energy, so much time, so much money into it, and it shows. I mean, it is an absolutely gorgeous TV show. It is visually like no other Star Trek that we've seen on the small screen.
Absolutely. And of course it is a prequel. It takes place 10 years before Star Trek the original series. In the Star Trek timeline, the first season of Discovery was 2256, which was a war story between the Federation and the Klingons. And then second season was 2257, and we feel like that season the stories got more back to humanity. Both seasons should be watched in order, even though we think the second season, is much better, so they saved the best for last in this case. But then season 3 will be set in 3205, because at the end of season 2 they jumped ahead 930 years to get to the future. And of course in season 2 of Discovery we got to see new versions of old favorites like Spock, of course, and we even saw a new version of Vina from the episode The Cage and the Menagerie. Now we have to say this, disappointment about season 2. Well, some people might say several, but less use of Laurel and Tyler, because I thought these were such great characters in season 1, so well developed. And then in season 2 they were not used as much. And Tyler was there in most of the episodes, but really he was more like a background character, like they were trying to figure out what to do with him. But the best thing about season 2, of course, was Ensign Mount as Captain Pike.
He stole the show. I mean, when he came on the screen, everyone went crazy.
Yeah, he was just awesome. I mean, as an actor, and even the part was so well written. He was just a wonderful character. So what do we know about season 3? 930 years in the future. Jonathan Frakes, we heard, directed 2 episodes. And about the Federation, we're not sure, but we saw from the trailer the Federation flag that used to have a lot of stars now only has a few stars, and it looks like they were going to be rebuilding the Federation during this season.
I think this is going to be the most intriguing season out of them all, because we're not looking to tie into the story into anything else. This is fresh territory. This, to me, is about exploration, what Star Trek is all about.
And this is what we've always wanted, is for Star Trek to go forward into Star Trek's future and see what's going to happen next to the Federation instead of doing these prequels.
I'm Ryan Case from Jackson, Mississippi, CEO of the USS Hayes and Regional Coordinator of Region 2 of Starfleet International. My question for you tonight: what makes you believe that Discovery is not in the prime timeline?
Well, when we break it down, we have to go to the Cage. That's the earliest Star Trek that we had in the original series, and we compare it to Discovery, what we know in the new show. And it's not a bad thing. I don't think it's bad to not believe that's not in the prime timeline. It's all right. We're used to alternate timelines in Star Trek.
We are, because we love the mirror universe, of course.
So let's look at the Enterprise itself, the original NCC 1701, in comparison to the Enterprise that was revealed in Discovery. We're going to notice that it's similar, but it is very different. And also, it is a much larger ship. So it's not just a visual change, but it's a size change. This is a juggernaut, this new Discovery Enterprise. And let's look at the styles of the uniforms during the era. We see the collars have no black around them. The ship is very gray inside. Again, the Cage Enterprise was very compact. How about Discovery? Well, it's more than just aesthetics. Higher grade of technology. They have the collars around the necks, so it really doesn't line up with the timeline that we know what the uniforms looked like in the Cage. And also, they revealed that they had red shirts on Discovery. Guess what? We know that in the Cage and in Where No Man Has Gone Before, there were no red shirts. And here we see Where No Man Has Gone Before. We get a little bit more color here, but still a very small and cramped bridge. Now compare that to what we see on the Enterprise and Star Trek Discovery.
The bridge, the background looks very different. The uniforms, of course, those Discovery uniforms were based more on the Kirk era after Where No Man Has Gone Before. The uniforms on Discovery are on the Enterprise with Pike. On the Discovery series, the uniforms looked more like the ones that had Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in the Corbomite maneuver, and then going forward in those episodes with the black collars.
And at times they've tried to make some retcons with regards to technology, but still, it just doesn't work for me. The original series, this is Klingons. And also, the motion picture going into the next generation, we had forehead ridges, longer hair, different armor. You know what? This was all explained in Enterprise. I wasn't thrilled with the explanation that was found out in that TV series because I was raised more on the John Ford novels, but I went with it. They actually tried to make sense. But in Discovery, I'm sorry. It's too extreme.
That does not even look like the same race. The Klingons in Discovery.
I mean, Klingon's head shouldn't have to grow in the back to be shaped like an eggplant. It's so far-fetched that another timeline actually makes more sense. And it's not just the facial features, but it's the armor, it's the ship, it's everything involved. I mean, multiple nostrils, apparently other appendages. I just can't buy into this is the prime timeline. So I'm hoping they do reveal that even though the showrunners insist that it's prime timeline, that it is indeed an alternate timeline.
So what would we like to see in Season 3 of Discovery? I would like to say, I hope it brings back more hope for the future. We know they're working towards, as we discussed, hopefully like rebuilding the Federation. Of course, you would think something must have happened, right? The Federation must have fallen and they have to rebuild it. But I do hope that it becomes a more hopeful show and a more positive show.
That's one of the best things about Star Trek when we were growing up watching the original series, and then later on into Next Generation, is you felt good after watching Star Trek. You actually felt like you learned something and you became a better person. So that's what we're hoping to rekindle, that feeling in Star Trek Discovery Season 3.
And just to throw this in, because people argue about canon, we see so many arguments on Facebook and social media. Canon is a sanctioned or accepted group or body of related works. The Star Trek canon is generally defined as all released television series and feature films. And this comes from Memory Alpha. So Discovery has to be canon because it is on TV, but it can still be a different timeline, as we mentioned. Or you can say that it's your canon. I mean, it's, we do accept it as part of Star Trek.
No, absolutely. We enjoy watching it. We're going to continue watching it. We just really hope that it's able to gel with the rest of the series, just like Deep Space Nine and Voyager and the others just made more sense aesthetically and as well as the storylines.
And we are old enough that we watched Star Trek during the 70s, the original series. So yeah, we're kind of the stodgy people who feel that canon is important. But on the other hand, we will watch anything under the banner of Star Trek. And we will always give a new Star Trek show a chance. We will say we like it if it has good storytelling, compelling characters, and tries to show the goodness in humanity. If it flies in the face of canon, we will say we don't like it. We also feel that other fans are entitled to their opinions. So if your opinion differs from ours, that's okay with us. One thing we hate is toxic fandom. We don't like fans bashing other fans for what they don't like or dislike.
If you think Threshold, the episode that was featured in Voyager, is one of the best Star Trek episodes, you're entitled to your opinion. I just think you're an idiot.
Okay. Yeah, it's not one of our favorites. And short treks, so far they've made 10 episodes. Each one is 10 or 15 minutes each. This is another series that they came on after first season of Discovery. Then they started this one episode a month, and then after the second season of Discovery, there was another season of short treks. And here you see there's the episode Calypso that took place in the 33rd century. That one might become more rounded out when we get to the third season of Discovery.
What I did like about this format is that it filled a void in between seasons, but also it proved that you can tell a compelling story in a short period of time, because we have a lot of friends that produce Star Trek fan films, and this essentially is the format of the length that you could produce a Star Trek fan film. So, yeah, it's worth watching these little short episodes.
Some of these are awesome, really. Some of them are better than some of the longer episodes. And of course, so this is the second season of Short Treks. They had more with Pike and Spock and Number One, but some of them were used as intros for other shows. You see down at the bottom, The Girl Who Made the Stars, which is an intro for Star Trek Prodigy, and then Ephraim and Dot, which is an intro for the new show Lower Decks, and Children of Mars, which at the time it aired, I mean, that was an intro for Picard. No one had seen Picard yet.
It set us up, and that was, I think, the perfect way to introduce the show, because it whet our appetite of what was going to come.
Indeed. And now, here's the new show, Picard. Premiered January 23rd in 2020. Season 1 was 10 episodes. Season 2, we heard, will be 10 episodes. 3 seasons total have been ordered so far. And no date as to when Season 2 will start filming. The COVID-19 has pushed this back, so it in other words, it probably would have started filming by now. And let's just look at the timeline for Star Trek Picard. 2370, just so you can put this in perspective, the last episode of TNG was 2370, and then 2379 was when Star Trek Nemesis took place. 2385 was the androids' rebellion on Mars, which happened in the Children of Mars short treks, and that was when Picard retired from Starfleet. And then it was 2 years after that Romulus was destroyed by the supernova. And so you understand they had at least 2 years that they knew about the supernova, and so they had that much time to evacuate the Romulans as much as they could. And then 2395 was the future timeline in All Good Things. And 2399 is when Picard Season 1 happens. We just thought that was interesting, that the Picard, the show, actually takes place 4 years after the future timeline in All Good Things, when Picard was, we saw him as an old man in that episode. And of course, that's Picard from All Good Things, and then from Star Trek Picard. So you can see he does look older in Star Trek Picard. Old favorites giving the fans what they want.
We are excited to see familiar faces.
This is James from Cincinnati. Do you think that Picard is offering too much fan service with all of the guest appearances?
We don't think it's really that bad. I mean, all of these guest stars that were on the show, these familiar characters, I mean, it was great seeing them. And they fit the plot. I think the writers wove it into the story very well, so it didn't look contrived that 7 of 9 showed up.
Yeah, if it was just bringing back the old crew and every episode Picard picked up a different member of the crew, I don't think that would be that exciting. But being fans of the Star Trek novels, we know that the novels expand the entire Star Trek universe and they pull essential characters together. And so that format is reflected here. So we're not just, this is not a follow-up to the Next Generation necessarily, but actually this is moving forward in the Star Trek universe. So we have Hugh interacting with 7 of 9, which makes total sense. We're seeing tons of Easter eggs from previous Star Trek episodes, which makes sense. I mean, anytime we have old favorites come back, even if it's just small segments. Hey, I'm looking for Tracy Lee Coco to come back as Lieutenant J. I mean, if we just get little things like that, I think it enriches the tapestry of the Star Trek universe.
And we also think Picard is really the best of the Kurtzman shows so far. And this is the one that more people like, too. We saw some people who didn't want to subscribe to CBS All Access just for Discovery, but then when Picard came on, a lot more people wanted to watch it.
And I'm so excited that they fleshed out the Romulan culture more, because anything that's Romulan based is going to catch my attention even more so than a standard Star Trek episode.
We loved that Picard had more about the Romulans. And also, it was great that Picard had the story of redemption and salvation, such as Picard, who became disgruntled with Starfleet and found more purpose in his life, starting with this series.
I love the fact that it's about him growing older. As we grow older and watch Star Trek, I mean, watching Captain Kirk when I was a kid put on reading glasses was no big deal to me. But now, being middle-aged and above, I'm like, wow, I'm watching it in a whole different light. And that's the beautiful thing about this show. We're experiencing along Jean-Luc Picard's journey as an older, retired Starfleet officer. It's really about him. It's the internal struggle, the internal emotions. It's just fantastic how they put this together.
And what would we like to see in Season 2 of Picard? Now, one thing, I do think they need to talk about Beverly Crusher. I mean, at least...
mention her.
Right. Even if they don't show her, at least say what happened to her, because I think Picard really did have feelings for her. And I'm a big fan of the novels, and in the novels, Picard and Crusher got married. So, I mean...
And they're going definitely a different direction from the novels.
Definitely.
And we know that. The novels aren't canon, that they can be overturned by a series. But it's just we want to know more about, especially the cliffhanger ending of Picard. What is he going to do now that he is not human?
Yeah, there could be an interesting take on that, or they might just not even address it. It's possible. But we've also heard that there will be some other guest stars.
Oh, we hope
fine.
so. Yeah, we hope so. And I'm sure that they're going to work it in a way that it makes sense. Because so far, the guests that have popped up, they make sense within the storyline.
And we do hope that all the characters get more development, like Raffi. And maybe Raffi will get to make up with her son.
I'd like to find out more about her, because we read the comic books and the books, and that does flesh out her character more. But tell you the truth, the number one thing that I would like to see in Picard, please just have Kate Mulgrew come back and give a line or two, maybe, even on a video screen. I'd love to see. I'd love to see that crossover of
okay.
Admiral Janeway. What happened to her during this time period?
As long as they make it fit the story and don't make it look contrived. Now, the next new TV show, Lower Decks. The first season will have 10 episodes. 2 seasons have been ordered so far. 2380, 1 year after Star Trek Nemesis, is when this show is supposed to take place. Created by the Rick and Morty creator. And of course, it's named after a popular Next Generation episode, Lower Decks. And this is the first Star Trek show that's marketed as a comedy. Other shows have had comedy episodes, they've had comedic movies, but this is the first full-out comedy series for Star Trek. And it's only in the U.S. and Canada because in the other countries, it was on Netflix before Picard and Discovery, but now Netflix doesn't want to pick up Lower Decks, so there's no place. CBS All Access doesn't carry it in the other countries.
It's so strange to me. That's really odd.
And is this Star Trek's answer to the Orville?
We believe so, because we love the Orville. It's just a different take on Star Trek. So I really think that the popularity of the Orville, well, it might have bled it over into saying, hey, what if we had an official Star Trek comedy?
The Orville was, in a lot of ways, a Star Trek show, and they talk about how it mocks Star Trek in some ways, but in a warm way that's friendly and shows that it actually loves Star Trek. So Lower Decks could be that way too in some ways, and we have seen some episodes. It does tend to mock Star Trek in some way, but it's, I don't find it offensive, so it could work. And we do like to say that we made this presentation as up to date as we can, but right now, I mean, but when you see this, you may already have more news about it, so just beware. And remember, there was a Star Trek animated series in the 70s, and you can just look at the picture on the left was from the first animated series. The picture on the lower right is from Lower Decks, and oh my, they've changed the animation. A lot of the colors look the same though, but the way they're drawing the people really looks different.
Which I think is very interesting because Lower Decks takes place 1 year after Nemesis, and we know that the clothing in Nemesis was drab. It was not as colorful. So in a short period of time, Starfleet again changes uniforms.
And just so you can see the Cations, on Lower Decks we had the Dr. Tiana, the cat-like woman. She is a Cation. And then on the animated series was our first look at a Cation back in 1973-74. And you can see how the two animated cat-like creatures were really very different. They almost don't look like the same species, except that they're both based on cats. And you can see how in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, there were two cat-like aliens, and they were reported to be Cation. And this picture from Star Trek Into Darkness, that was reported to be a Cation as well, even though she looks a lot more human than the others.
What I like about the variety of Cations that we're seeing is very similar to the variety of cats.
Oh, right, because cats can look very different too. Exactly.
This is Jamie from Nashville, Tennessee, and I'd like to ask, do you think that characters in Lower Decks could show up in Picard?
Now that's one thing that I would very much enjoy is the characters. What's unique about this show is that we're growing with the characters. We're starting to like them. We're getting to know them better as people. We're growing with them. And can you imagine? It's by the time that these young ensigns mature, they could be running their own ships. They could be crossing paths in the Picard timeline.
It would be weird at first, but I think they could do it. But it's just hard to imagine these cartoon characters, and then on Picard they would have to be real actors. And
other sci-fi series have done it.
It
and
has
it's proved
happened.
successful.
But these are the four main characters on Lower Decks. So, and what we noticed was like a similarity in the TNG characters from the episode Lower Decks. We have Tendi, the green Orion girl, looks a lot like, or is similar to Nurse Ogawa, because they're both in the medical field. And then we have Torek, the Vulcan from the Lower Decks episode, is like Rutherford on Lower Decks because they're both in engineering.
And they take their job super seriously.
They do. Well, of course, Torek would because he's a Vulcan. And then we have Boimler from Lower Decks, and he's a lot like Sam Lavelle from the TNG episode Lower Decks, the one that's on the command track. And then here, this is not much a similarity, but it's like this is the person that's left over. So Mariner from Lower Decks, the cartoon, is, well, we'll say equates to Sita Jaxo, from the episode Lower Decks of TNG. And if you ever watched that Teen Titans cartoon, remember that? Cyborg and Beast Boy. Does Cyborg remind you of Rutherford?
This is the first thing we thought of when we saw these pictures.
Yes, and then And then Beast Boy Changeling, the green skin like Ensign Tendi on Lower Decks. I mean, was this intentional or what? And also, so Star Trek seems to have a thing for these ocular implants, right? And they're all on the left eye. Detmer from Discovery, and then Rutherford, and then Seven of Nine, all have these ocular implants. Now we get to look at the changes in the uniforms, and this is interesting. So on Lower Decks in the year 2380, you see that uniform, and then on Picard in 2385. Now this is from Picard when they had a flashback to the time when Picard retired from Starfleet. So you see what the uniforms looked like then. And then in 2399, the year that Picard is supposed to be taking place. So the uniforms are close enough that you can tell, you can see a progression from one to the other, but they're different that you can make very good distinctions with the timelines of when they are from. So what would we like to see on this season of Lower Decks? Now I would say more background for the four main characters, and I think they are interesting people, and we could learn a lot more about them. And Boimler, of course, I mean, he definitely needs to grow more. He's just such a bumbler, and I hope we get to see him actually mature and learn more. And as far as the humor, you know, the show is not all that funny to me. It's not exactly my style of humor. The black goo and the zombies and all of that. It's not really my style. I
Vomit and bodily fluids.
I mean, it's so gross. But it's okay if it's your thing. I just think that I would like more intellectual humor. I mean, just, you know, just character interactions that might be funny, those kind of things. But that's me.
One of the things I love about this show are the graphics when it pertains to the ships and space. I mean, they're beautiful. We're seeing a new style of ship for this show. So I want to see the technology going forward. It's so aesthetically pleasing, and I'd like to see what the next step is just past Nemesis, what's in store for this era of Star Trek. So I'm very positive of how this is tying in with the other series and the timeline.
Now, Strange New Worlds. This is another show that is coming on sometime. We know that it is going to have these three actors from Discovery: Pike, number 1, and Spock, as seen on Discovery Season 2. And so we've been told it will begin filming in 2021. And it's promised to be more episodic instead of the story arcs that we're seeing on Discovery and Picard right now. And answer to the fans, please, because after Discovery Season 2, there was so much talk. Please give Anson Mount his own show. We want to see more Captain Pike.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And they finally did it. I kind of, you know, I mean, of course, I love Anson Mount too. And yes, this could be a good show. I'm still thinking I really wish they wouldn't do a prequel, because they're going to mess up canon so much with another prequel show.
But I like the format, is that Monster of the Week, Problem of the Week, it will be individualistic. I mean, I need to take a break from these massive, long shows because there's just so many we follow, and there's mentally I can only take in so much. So I think it's going to be refreshing.
Now let's look at the Pike timeline. 2250 to 2265, those are supposed to be the years that Pike was in command of the Enterprise. And so 2254 is when the Cage happened. 2257 was that time that Pike took command of Discovery for Season 2. 2265 is when Kirk takes command of the Enterprise. So, you know, when Kirk takes command, Pike moved up, got a promotion, but it was a year after that, in 2266, that Pike has the accident that we know that he's going to have. And 2267 is when the menagerie happened. That is when Spock decides to kidnap Pike, and he gets court-martialed, and Spock takes him to Talos for. And here we can just see the visuals again of how they changed the look of Pike in the wheelchair. The one from the original series, and then the one on the top right was Pike in Discovery. So they updated the look, but you can still tell it's a pretty gruesome situation. And the look of the different shows, and again the way they changed the uniforms. And we just have to show this power couple here. Jerry O'Connell and Rebecca Romijn are married in real life. So Rebecca Romijn is #1 on the new Strange New World show, and Jerry O'Connell is #1. He plays Commander Ransom on Lower Decks. Star Trek's power couple. Now, what would we like to see on Strange New Worlds? For one thing, I mean, come on, #1, because she's the one we know the least about. So they could do a lot with her character, and with her background, we don't even know where she's from or anything.
Mm-hmm. And I hope that truly is strange and new. I want it to be so different when it comes to exploration.
Yeah, there's a lot they could do with it if they just explore. Yeah, it could be good. So we have this, the Untitled Section 31 series. It's supposed to have Michelle Yeoh again as the Mirror Universe Philippa Georgiou. And it was previously reported that filming would start when Discovery Season 3 finished filming, but of course Discovery has already finished filming Season 3 and they still haven't started on the Section 31 series. So there's no recent news on this, but we still heard that we haven't heard that they're not doing it, but it was not mentioned at the Star Trek Universe panel that they did at San Diego Comic-Con. I mean, they announced Lower Decks there, but nothing was mentioned about Section 31. And so what would we like to see on the Section 31 series?
Well, for me, this is one of the reasons why I don't feel that Discovery is in the prime timeline, because there's so much Section 31 activity that is out in the open.
And it's supposed to be a secret, right? On Deep Space Nine, they didn't know about Section 31.
No one knew about it.
And now on Discovery, everybody knows about it.
Yeah, there's layers upon layers of things that I don't feel that fit into the canon of the prime timeline. But I think it's going to be an exciting show. Actually, this is one of the ones that I'm most excited about going forward, because I love Michelle Yeoh. I think she's fantastic. She's a dynamo. She's physically amazing, her fight scenes. So to have a show that's all about intrigue and these deeper plot points, I think it's going to fill a darker section of the Star Trek universe that hasn't been explored to this extent outside of the novels.
The Ready Room, hosted by Will Wheaton. This was a show that came on after each episode of Picard. Will Wheaton would interview people from the show, the actors, behind-the-scenes people, and it was just great. It was giving more information about the show.
So I'm hoping they continue this tradition of having something similar after all the newer shows, the live-action shows that come up, because it does give us some extra insight onto the characters, the actors, and developers.
They did one episode of Ready Room after the first episode of Lower Decks as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty cool. And also for Discovery, Season 1, they had a show called After Trek, which did not have Will Wheaton. It had the
I like
other
it
guy.
way better. Yeah, I like it way better with Will Wheaton.
Definitely.
The interesting thing about CBS All Access is that none of this is really new. In the 70s, Paramount actually wanted to make a fourth television network. Now, it fell through, it didn't work out, but the idea was to have as the cornerstone of the network the follow-up to the original series and to the animated series entitled Star Trek Phase 2. We know that that script morphed into what would become the motion picture, but the idea of Paramount having a Star Trek show to start a new network started out that long ago. Fast forward to the 1990s, what do we know about Voyager?
It was the flag show for UPN, which was a new network.
Again, that was a struggling idea to have networks at that time when there were just so many. And, I mean, it worked to a degree, but UPN ended up being folded into another network. But that brings us to CBS All Access. CBS All Access, in order to go to drive in a customer base, they had to have something that fans wanted. And we know that Star Trek fans are passionate fans. We're going to follow these stories to whatever station or network it's going to be on. So, yes, CBS All Access, we signed up from day one, and there's more to it than just Discovery and Lower Decks in Picard. There's a whole host of other shows on there. Twilight Zone, oldish episodes of Star Trek, other classic TV shows. So we definitely see the vehicle has been in the works for decades now, this idea of having something that's very unique and pulling it into the umbrella of everything that CBS has in store. But we know recent developments that CBS and Viacom have merged. And because of the success of Disney Plus and a variety of other Plus networks, we hear that right around the corner, Paramount Plus could happen.
Paramount Studios has a lot of popular movies. And so if this happens with Paramount Plus, Star Trek would fall under that. The new Star Trek shows would be there.
Yes.
And that could be pretty cool. A lot more people would buy it then.
Yeah, because that's the driving force for a lot of people signing up for all these different apps is how many movies can I watch, how many exciting shows can I watch. So we're going to see what happens.
Hi, this is Marina from New Jersey. I have a question. In your opinion, why do you think that so many people are still reluctant to sign up for CBS All Access?
There's actually a couple reasons why some people don't want to sign up for CBS All Access. One, they say, I don't want to pay $6 to watch television. Again, that's a mental thing. We've been taught that ABC, NBC, and CBS, well, they've been free our whole lives. So to spend $2 per episode, roughly, to watch Star Trek might seem absurd to some.
Because, I mean, why can't we just watch it on TV or cable? I mean, everybody has cable, right?
Realistically, though, that's just a format that's going the way of the dodo, just like radio. I mean, things are going streaming now. That's just the way it is. Another challenge with some is that they live in areas that don't have streaming or don't have quality internet service. I mean, all these are legitimate concerns. But we as fans, we try to do things together as a group. We found it very successful for ourselves. We actually have people over. We think that watching Star Trek in a communal setting is fantastic. It's economically sound. It helps our friends out, and it helps us to be closer in the Trek community. So, yeah, are other ways. If you don't have CBS All Access, you might want to just share that information and network with people in your area, because we think it's awesome. We think Trek is awesome.
We want to watch it enough that we pay for it, but we share with our friends.
There are different ways that we network with other Star Trek fans. to watch all these CBS All Access shows in a community way as well as in a social way when we meet up at conventions. Now, Kavor here, she is the commanding officer of the USS Athena.
The USS Athena is based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and it's a part of Starfleet Command. Starfleet Command is a Star Trek club that has been around forever, and so we always welcome new people. It's an international club. And then there's Starfleet International, another Star Trek club. In this club, we are members of the USS Werner von Braun, that's based in Huntsville, Alabama.
Another great club for doing Trek things together. And I'm the commanding officer of the XLV Predator. It is a ship in the Klingon Assault Group. Contrary to popular belief, you don't have to be a Klingon or love Klingons to join this club. Yes, we do accept all alien races, Andorians, Romulans, you name it. Ships are everywhere, and it's absolutely free to join.
The Imperial Xeno Legion is the branch of CAG that takes other aliens.
Thanks for joining us. You might want to know where you can find us and our podcasts.
We actually have two podcasts. StarPod Log is classic science fiction and fantasy. StarPodTrek is all Trek all the time. We're part of the Holosuite Media Network. We also have a YouTube channel. We're on iTunes and Spotify, and you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to join our group page on Facebook. Simply search for us at StarPod Log and StarPodTrek. We'd love to interact with you.
Live long and prosper.